Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Be Victorious. Y'all know who I am already. I'm Dr. Torie, and I am here, and I am ready to get this on and popping. Do we still say popping? Is that a new term? But anywho, this guest needs no introduction. I mean, he's here, been supporting me from day one, but some things have came up and some updates need to happen. And I need to go ahead and update with him. Are you ready, Marv? Because I'm ready to have this discussion. You all know who this is. It's my producer.
What's up?
Hey,
You good?
I am good.
Glad to be back on Be Victorious.
Man, you just don't understand. I appreciate it so much for taking time out of your schedule to do this because as you've seen since you've been on the ACEs journey with me, it's needed.
Yes.
Really bad. And one thing that I love, like I said, our first two guests since we've been back have been all that in a bag of chips. So I have to shout out LP and I have to shout out Sister Friend. I needed them to go ahead and get in there because there have been a lot of people that have been wanting me to relaunch everything. And I have, especially the podcast. It's getting a lot of attention right now. So I wanted to take a pause before we get in because a lot of people are really interested and have signed up. And I'm very humbled. But I wanted to talk about a few things or a few updates, not just here with the CDC, but just with us in Be Victorious.
Right.
So
let's do it. Let's do it.
I think it's a great thing to do.
Yes.
Now, I want to give a notice of that beautiful picture that is in your background. That's me.
That's Dr. Victorious, Dr. Torie. You know, I'm here in my studio where we do the podcast production and we record podcasts. So we'll be opening that up to the public in the very near future, you know, but this is where all the magic happens. So when I am editing the podcast for Be Victorious, or whether it's I'm editing for my podcast, the Man Listen Show, this is where it all goes down.
I like it. I'm humbled because this means I get to have not only live guests, but hopefully in the
future,
a live studio audience. I'm moving up like George Jefferson.
Yep. We're gonna get the live studio audience. Look at from your mouth to God's ears, right?
Hey, because if God brings you to it, he brings you through it. And I'll tell you, he is the overall reason why we're here. Because without him, I'm nothing. So I thank you for this opportunity. And another opportunity to reach out to people. People might feel a little bit better in person instead of, doing it virtually. Yeah. And so to all those people in the DFW area, I'm here. I have a few people already that is like, okay, you in Dallas? I'll be in Dallas this time. Yeah. So the Calendarly is open. You guys can go ahead and put in the information that you need. If you want to do it virtual, you can. But if you're in the DFW area and you want to go ahead and are live,
Now listen. Live studio audience, you still got to be quiet. You can't be like on Good Times. Remember Good Times back in the day? When folks would be stalking, they'd be like, "That's right," and doing all that. Now you got to be quiet now. But
and I think it will be good. I mean, it depends on the person. If
I'll be quiet. I'm just making a joke.
Because people really need to know this, and you're saying this so they can know. I mean, you got to think about it. We have actually came up. So some people might not want this. They're telling their ACEs story. But then again, they might want to talk about something else. I don't want to just limit it to people sharing their ACEs story. Right. Now, all of these updates that they have, they might want to talk about bullying that they've been through, which is now considered an ACEs, or community violence that have impacted them, which is now considered an ACE. Or how about mass shootings, school shootings? All of that, you guys, is now considered ACEs, which is more and more, it affects more and more people. So I don't want to just limit it to somebody that has an ACEs story. I really wanted to have these discussions for people to continue to bring awareness to this important pandemic. What you think?
Because there are people who are doing work in the community working with people who more than likely have ACEs, working to help make their lives better, giving them resources. There's a few people that I can think of off the top of my head. And when I look at what I've learned from you, Dr. Torie, when it comes to ACEs, this can be something that will help people in many aspects of their life. Number one, we want people to be able to look inside themselves, right? And find out, okay, what's going on? Why are certain things not working for me? Why
Right.
does this seem so hard? And what do I need to address so you can fix yourself? And once you fix yourself, it can start going towards, okay, now I'm a better parent. Now I'm a better partner for who I'm with. And I always go back to what you say when people give their score, you always say, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Whether you have 10, 11, or like me, just have one, it's not a bad thing. But still, me having one, I recognized last season, when we were talking to guests, when you were talking to guests, and I would talk to them behind the scenes. When we first started, it was hard for me because I don't have a high number when it comes to the ACEs test or a score. So, and I always tell people, I grew up. I didn't grow up in an environment where I felt unsafe,
Right.
or I had to worry about where my next meal was going to come from, or anything like that. Now, there's some things that that we've talked about that we'll mention, here briefly, that I think maybe should be added to the test. But I recognize that me being aware of how ACEs impact people, and in my limited interaction, it doesn't make me better than anybody. But what it does do is makes me more aware of how I need to interact with people. I talk with people all day, every day. And it used to be, there's this thing now, because everybody gets, advice from, relationship advice and mental health advice from the internet. And one of these things, people pass out memes, and it's always like, my cutoff game is superb, and just cutting folks off and doing whatever. Now there's times where you need to protect your peace, right? And establish proper boundaries. But sometimes you need to recognize, like, why is this person really acting like this? Something's got to be going on. Why are you drinking so much? Why are you doing all these drugs? Why are you so promiscuous? Why are you so easy to be set off? And then once you start drilling down, and if you make them aware of it, say, hey, listen, you ever took this score? You ever took this test? You ever took this quiz? And then you say, oh yeah, that did happen to me. That did happen to me. And then you start to realize, I need to address it. They may not address it right then, because I know a lot of people that's like, yeah, I know what has me, I want to say messed up, for lack of a better term, but I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to confront it.
Yeah.
At least you know what it is. So
Yeah. I mean, and what I love is that you admitted, yeah, you didn't know, but now you know. It has opened up a lot for you and changed your outlook on life, period. So you've never told me that before, Marv. So thank you. So just so y'all know, that's probably the 110% reason why we're back, because you have to have somebody that actually believes in what you're doing and all of this other stuff. And this man, amongst a lot of people that do, because I'll be honest, the first two people said, well, I learned about ACEs from you. All I am here to do is to get the information out there so I can make people become ACEs aware. There's plenty of room in the mental health space for everybody. So let's be clear, this information is out there.
Yeah.
It's what you do with it that's going to help you and help others. And you're helping others. Not only are you helping me, thank you, but you're helping others and you're helping yourself. And that's a good thing.
And clearly, the work that you're doing is having an impact, because I've always told people, there's this book. Now, I might be a heathen, but there's this book that I've read. I know the Bible. I know the Lord. But there's this book called The Prayer of Jabez. And there was one part of the book where it was this minister or this pastor that he was very self-conscious and anxious about, was his ministry doing what it was supposed to do? Was he
Mhm.
fulfilling the mission that God gave to him,
Mhm.
for this world? And in the book, it said, as long as you help one person,
That's it.
you've done your job. As long
That's
as you made a difference in one person's life, you have done your job.
that's it.
And Dr. Victorious, you just listed off 3 people. So you've already done your job, but that's not where it stops though. That's not where it stops. We're gonna
No.
keep going. Because people are noticing, because like you said, we're starting to see the change on the CDC. People go up there and they look for COVID and then what's going on with that. Type in ACEs, and you can see, okay, now they're having to adjust. And the reason why that's happening, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, is because of the work that Dr. Torie is doing.
And I didn't want to say that, and I'll say
I know you
that
didn't, but I said
to
it for you.
you. I know, thank you, because I sure appreciate it. I actually went back to my dissertation just to make sure, because let's be clear, it's not just me, it's a bunch of people. There are so many people. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Andrew, for leading. But the person that ignited for me, it was Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. When I saw that TED, I went immediately to my dissertation chair. I said, this is what I want to do, because it answered
We're
all
gonna get her on the show. We're gonna get her on the show. Yeah.
I think so too. I think it's a lot of people now that the updates are there are going to want to talk. And because let's be clear, I know for a fact it was in my dissertation recommendations like community violence. No offense. I have been in Chicago for 22 years, and out on average, I want to say I had 3 to 5 students pass away in a school year. That was draining for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you really want to know. So why is community violence not on there? Or mass shootings,
Right.
because mass shootings have taken over, or bullying. How many students have been impacted because of that? But not just students. You got adults that bully in the workplace too. Let's be clear, it's out here. And all I'm
And the thing
saying is,
about it
before
is,
2019, it wasn't,
yeah.
and here it is now. So
And the
I'm not.
thing about it is, all those things, hurt people, hurt people. So I would imagine or venture to say that the person who's being bullied in the workplace is either is one thing or the other. Either they've been
Yep.
bullied their whole life,
Yep.
or it was that person that was bullied. Now the circumstances have changed. Now it's their turn, their time to bully.
You're
So
right.
again, if we address those ACEs, we can, start to say, okay, how do we fix this? How do
Yeah.
we, approach this to make things better for everybody? You talked about things being added, and I talked about how, like, I didn't score high, whatever. My score was a 1.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I would like to see, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, is
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a sick parent.
Mm-hmm.
When I look back on to my childhood, while I
Yeah.
didn't feel unsafe, there was that feeling of impending doom all the time,
Mm-hmm.
because my father was sick all the time. He started smoking when he was 14.
Oh wow.
Didn't stop smoking until, he was like, yo, you will die if you don't stop smoking.
Right.
And just being an elementary school student, being in high school, being in college, and getting that call, hey, yo, we rushing your dad to the hospital, he's having a heart attack,
Hmm.
type of thing, not knowing if your father's going to make it. I
Right.
remember Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas time for, most people who celebrate, you're supposed to be like, okay, we're enjoying family, we're enjoying one another. I specifically remember as a child thinking, this might be my last Christmas with him. Every year, thinking like, this might be the last one. This might be the last one. And it was just life. But now that I think back on it, it impacted me because I've been through depression and anxiety, and I know other parents who are fixated on their death, like, oh no, I got a cold, I got pink eye, I'm about to die. Make sure you do this, this, that, and other for my kids. And you
Right.
create this anxiety and all this stress for people when, it's just like, all right, relax.
Right.
We all gonna die, but you're probably not gonna die right now. So let's not put all this on your friends, family, and children. So
Right.
that's one thing I like to see added, because I think that impacts people. I've talked to people that said, a big part of my life was disrupted. or it was hard because I had to take care of my mom because she
Right.
was sick.
I will say you said something very important though. You said that um growing up you watched your father, and one of the things that happened as far as the smoking, it was like, okay, you better stop before you have a heart attack. Now he probably had some aces then and there too. Yes, the cigarettes or the smoking was one thing, but heart attack is related to adverse childhood experiences too. Just letting you
Yeah.
know.
And my dad grew up in a time where men didn't really share their feelings.
Of
And,
course.
as a young person, teenager, you don't know the questions that you really want to ask. Like now there's questions I want to ask, like, okay, because I never met my grandfather. He died of a heart attack before I was born. And
Wow.
I never met either one of my grandfathers. And there's questions now that I have as a 46-year-old man. I lost my father when I was 2001, so 24. So I've been living more years without him than I had him, but he had a powerful impact on my life. But there's questions that you would like to ask, but for the most part, I feel like he grew up in a loving environment. He loved his mother, he loved his brothers and his nieces and nephews, but he also grew up in the 30s and the 40s. So when you talk about adverse childhood experience, it don't get no bigger than Jim Crow. He wasn't even born a full citizen, right? He couldn't use the same water fountain as other people. So
Right.
that's one of the biggest adverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
Jim Crow.
Let's
So
be clear.
right,
You are correct.
so yeah, but I think that you're right. All of those things impact because mental health impacts your physical health.
Yeah.
Because when
That's
you're
the reason why
depressed,
categories are broken down into, 3 different categories so people can understand it's not just physical and emotional abuse, it's physical and emotional neglect. He neglected his body by not or continuing to smoke. So
yeah,
he would be placed in that category for the physical neglect and the emotional neglect, because I'm sure it neglects you emotionally, but everybody don't see. I
nah,
think that's the
nah,
thing.
I definitely wasn't neglected, but I know that from talking to you and you know, observing all it because I'm firsthand observer on all the
Yeah,
shows, right? Because I'm the
yeah.
producer. Corporal punishment, that he definitely dealt with that. And I know for a lot of people that there's a line that blurs on whether it's abuse or whether it's discipline. Yeah, no, I know you
But
and
that's just like
I know you and I disagree.
But that's just like how you just said, well, no, I wasn't neglected. Hold on now. So physical neglect in somebody else's eyes might be different than physical neglect in somebody else's eyes. Somebody that can consider physical neglect could be watching their parents die. You know what I mean? That's emotional neglect, because you keep saying, Mom, get better, Mom or Dad, get better. And if they're not, it's draining you emotionally. So it's in the eye of the beholder, which is the reason why when they did that study in 1998, the people that took that study, it was 17,000 people, and everybody wasn't impacted. African Americans were the lowest of the number. So of course, we're not going to take ACEs seriously. I'm beating my brain talking about it, but it's because of things like how you just said. Well, I was taken care of. I was too. That's why I always start off and say, I love my parents because they were great. However, the things that they did is what had an impact on me and affected me. The divorce affected me. The things that my mom did affected me. The things that my dad did affected me. When they were bringing people into our household dysfunction affected me. You see what I'm saying? So it's in the eye of the beholder, not saying that you were neglected at all. However, in somebody else's eyes, that can be considered neglect, which is the
Yeah,
reason
I mean,
why.
yeah, and I agree with you. I agree, but that's just not my
And
testimony because I say it
I
all
know,
the time. I
and I
say it all
know
the time. I I just don't. I feel like I was well loved, and when I hear your story, when I hear our guest story,
Mm-hmm.
my testimony is nowhere near that, and that's why I feel like I have a bigger mission to help people and to show love and to show kindness, even sometimes when I don't want to. But
Right.
things have changed because I was just talking about it with some friends of mine. You talk about neglect. Let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interviewing you right now.
Right.
Cause you tell I got a podcast on my own.
No, you
Uh,
got it.
were you a latchkey kid?
Tell me what because my definition of latchkey is different than other people's definition
When
of
you
latchkey.
come home, when you came home from school,
Uh-huh.
you had to use your key, open up for you or you and your brothers, and lock the door back and wait for your parent to come home. Did you let yourself out and did you let yourself in?
It was always somebody at my house. I never had a key to my house at all.
Okay. So that just doesn't apply to you. But for
Yeah.
many people, I'm sure many other people because we're the same age, right? Oh, I told my age and I just told yours.
Uh-huh.
We
That's
good.
okay. I'm okay to be 46, baby. Huh,
Right. But we were talking about it, how many of us, that was the routine.
Yeah.
You know what time to walk out the house to get on the bus. You better not miss the bus.
Right.
You know
That's
what,
true.
when the bus dropped you off, you better not lose your key.
You're right.
I'm in the house, you lock the door, you call mama, call dad, or whoever can answer the phone. I'm home,
Mm-hmm.
hang out, hang up, watch
Right.
TV, do your homework, take that chicken out to defrost or whatever, and that
Right.
was it. You couldn't do that now. That would be considered neglect now in most people's eyes. So we
Which
talk
is the
about
reason why they
so
needed to update
right,
the original ACEs study,
yeah,
because people think it doesn't apply to them because it has never been updated. I want to shout out Philadelphia because they did their best to update and did it in 2016 and bring a light on the African American community. So they did that. Thank you, Philadelphia. Gotta shout them out. It happened, but none of the changes were put on the CDC. So that's the reason why I say I don't want to give credit to just myself,
yeah,
because there are other people out there, that have tried to do this and make the changes. All I'm saying is
yeah,
my changes were in 2019, and
right.
here it is 2023, and the words community violence,
Mhm.
bullying, all of the recommendations and suggestions that I put on there are on their website. Not
So
to say that that Philadelphia didn't have more, because I'm sure that they did. I'm talking about Dr. Torie Williams.
right.
And that's why it's a big deal for us.
Mhm.
It has to be updated. And
Mhm.
so, to
And that's
your
why I
point,
brought it up because we talked about
yeah,
my dad growing up in the 30s and 40s. We talked about
yeah,
us growing up in the 80s and 90s, and
yeah,
about when the test first came out and how Black people didn't test as high because probably for us we were just like, that's normal life.
yeah.
Wasn't nothing adverse about that because we all did it. But
And
now
I
that we
hear,
know better, we know like, no, that's adverse, and that affects your child, and
mhm,
it affects them in one way or the
yes.
other. It does.
Yes. And that's the reason why, ta-da, ta-da, I had to redo another study. I had to, because I want to continue to shine a light on this pandemic. What happens? It's like, oh my God, I got a score of a 10. Okay. That doesn't mean that your score is better or more than somebody else's. It just is saying that you have more aces to address than others. Marv, you have a score of a 1. You have that one ace to address. However, I will say I still feel like, due to the awareness of aces, it can help you understand where you are as far as relationships, where you are as far as a lot of things. Because let's be clear, I'm a single mother. I was married. I promise you, I did the best that I could after, like, when I was doing my study. I'm like, oh my God, my kids are going to have adverse childhood experiences, not because I want them to. They don't, but how long am I going to stay in this situation?
Yeah. And let me ask you this question.
About it.
Yeah, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
Because I was married as well.
Oh,
Divorced.
okay.
I know that it had an impact on my children, but my children were much older when we decided to split. So that question that you were asking, how long can I do this? Right? I did it. We did it, because it was two of us. We
Right.
did it for the kids. And
Right.
obviously, it didn't work, right? We had our moment. We had our family. We're still family. But it did impact our children. But I know that the impact was probably less because by the time the youngest got out of high school and was well into college and we decided to say, hey, listen, it's time to part ways, they were adults. So it was no longer an adverse childhood experience. It was just, this is something tough to deal with and we need to address it as a family. But that's not my question. My question to you is, when I look at ACEs, am I out of line in saying that you really could use this ACEs score to, I don't want to say determine compatibility because that's putting judgment on scores, but I think it maybe something that we should consider because it's like, okay, before we decide to do this, before we decide to become one, what do we need to address? Because I promise you, when things got to the end, I started seeing things, and no judgment on my ex, right? But there were just certain things that we didn't address, and that certain ways that I am, certain ways that she is or was, because I don't know if she's doing work or not.
Right.
It would have been very, very hard for us to see life the same way,
Right.
based off what each one of us went through when we were children. And we should have addressed that, and we didn't. So what do you think about it?
I think it should have been discussed, but
you don't know though. So like when you were in your early 20s, mid 20s, we didn't know then to ask these questions. Just like, oh, you cute. You think I'm cute? I love you. You love me. We have fun together. And then those things start to creep back up. Y'all change.
100 with you. I did way before the ACEs quiz. I did. And it's funny because it was my story. Anytime somebody asks me, like, so, what's going, you and your husband, I asked him, like, are you marrying me for the kid? Because a lot of people don't know that I had a child first and then we got married. Everybody thinks, marriage first because that's our, life tradition. No, I had the kid first. But when he said, will you marry me? I wanted to know, why are you marrying me for the kid or are you marrying me for me? And of course, the answer was me, because that was the right answer to say. So I'll be honest with you, to answer your question. Yes, I do think that's the reason why we have so many people that are getting into these relationships without even looking at the red flags. And that's the reason why a lot of therapists, you have a lot of psychotherapists, you have a lot of, and there's different types of therapy out there, let's be clear. But you have those therapists that have the ACEs study that I thank the Lord, and I've talked to several of them, are going to now use the study that I have seriously because it's updated. People don't want to rely on 1995 information. And if you're a researcher like I am, you know that information ain't valid no more.
Listen.
Guess what? It is now.
But guess what, though? It is now because you're doing the work. But I find that so offensive. You know why? Because 95 was my heyday. And it makes it seem like it's so ancient. That's almost 30 years ago. I'm still stuck in the 90s. 90s R&B, you know what I mean? They can bring back 90s.
They don't give it away either. Let's be clear. The 90s was great and y'all know it. So it is what it is, because they still trying to reinvent the 90s and been trying to reinvent the 90s since the 90s.
That's
but
right.
This survey was not. And I'm glad that it is now. So now more people can say those things like, Okay. Because from now on, oh, for sure, are going to be asking questions, not as a single mother, but just for myself in general. Because, of course, this is an investment. Marriage is supposed to be for better or for worse. So you got a lot of statistics right now. Let's be clear. The divorce is so common now. It's more common in the code. And that's because people are doing it or getting married for all the wrong reasons instead of for what we actually need to do. And then when it comes time for the addressing of the red flags or doing these type of things, we're ignoring it. And then we get mad and then we get divorced. It's like, well, ace this quiz. What if you were to ask these just general questions just to get in a headspace of who, what, when, where, why? It might help you. Because
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah. And I don't think people should use it, like I said, to judge anybody or to automatically rule somebody out, because honestly, I could be ruled out. Some people could be like, oh no, listen, he won't understand me.
Right.
He won't understand what I've been through. He'll judge me. He'll look at me differently. He'll look at my family differently. His friends won't like me. So I don't want people to use it to judge their potential partner, but definitely something to create conversation, go deeper so that you have an understanding. Because my thing is this: would I marry again? Yes. Am I going to get married again? Who knows? But whatever relationship I'm in, this person has to have done the work to heal themselves or be actively doing it. Because I don't know if I told my story on here. I've told it several places. I have been through severe depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all of those things. And it was hard to get through that. And honestly, while I didn't have aces, my children, I talked about they didn't get it from divorce because they were adults when we divorced, they were adults when we separated. They dealt with a parent that had mental health issues. They dealt with me. And, it wasn't until my ex-wife told me that my son asked the question, is dad depressed? And in my mind, I'm thinking like, he 8th grade, what he know about depression?
Right.
Because I thought, hey, I'm powering through this. As long as I provide, protect, support, I'll be all right. I'll fix my stuff whenever I can fix it. And then to hear my only son, it affected my girls too. But my son, my youngest, my son, my dude, say, dad depressed. And I said, well, what do you know about that? Because I thought she was just making it up. And I said, nah, they talked about depression in the schools. They talked about it. And everything that they had on the checklist, you fit every single box. So he asked the question. So I had to address those things that were impacting me. Now, it wasn't things from my childhood. There was, negative things happened to me as a young adult that created that type of spiral that I put myself in or that I was in. But, I did give my kids aces and we've talked about it, and I try to encourage them to, not make the mistake that I made. If things get tough, talk about it to somebody. There's no shame in it. So, again, recognizing that it's there and trying to do better.
I want to fuss at you. Larry held some stuff. Sister Fran held some stuff. Mom, this your first time telling me all of this. No, seriously. And the fact that you admitted it, I have to give you props, because how many parents out there are going to do that? And just so you know, that's the calls that I've been getting since I have started working for myself and doing what I'm doing now. I got a lot of school districts saying, can you do a parent professional development? Can you come talk to our parents? Because it's the parents. So just imagine me as a parent. What do you think that I'm doing? I am aware that I get Our children are aces. That's why resiliency is key. I'm heavy on extracurricular activities. You know that. I'm always in somebody's gym or at a play or doing something with my own kids. But to see that also on the website, that they have different things for people to do. Oh, it's on the website, y'all, but that's all right. Y'all don't have to go to the CDC website. You can go to mine because it's definitely on there. And all that information is telling you that there are ways that you can address your ACEs in your community, address it in your family. All of that information is finally on the website. Finally. Wow. Not when you were married, but it's on the website. Now, when I was married, but it's on the website now.
Yeah.
I'm how many other parents are going to open up and admit that?
Yeah, I don't know, but everybody that knows me knows that I am someone who tries to lead by example.
Wow.
And whether I'm doing the right thing, I'm gonna say, hey, listen, this is what you could do to make your life easier, or I'm very transparent about the things that I'm not doing right, that I could be doing better, to say, hey, listen, learn from me. There's this thing I always told my son, because my son and we spend a lot of time together. And I wrote a book about fatherhood. People can find it on Amazon. It's called Mythbusters, Lessons from Active Black Fathers. And I talk about lessons I learned from different Black men who I encountered in my life. And I tell people all the time, this is not a book to raise a NFL athlete or a Harvard graduate. It's about being a better father. And I talk about the mistakes that I made. But I always tell my son that, a smart person learns from their mistakes, but a wise person learns from the mistakes of others.
Yeah.
So if I can be that example for people, then what we say, I did my job.
Congratulations. And this is the whole thing, Marv. This is what we have to do. Now, I knew you was an author. Glad you shouted yourself out. But look at how much you can use when you're going on because you get called to do your speaking engagements and your events and things like that. You're a producer. You seriously have work that you've been doing and you're out there. Would you include the ACEs quiz as an introduction?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would. Because like I said, when I tell my story, I'm big on mental health. And because as men, we put so much on ourselves. And I'm still a work in progress. I get burnt out. I do too much. It's hard for me to tell people I know and love no.
Right.
So I'm working on trying to set those boundaries, because I look at my dad, I look at my Uncle Junior, I look at them and how they approached life. And all they did was work, take care of the family. They worked hard and they played hard. They worked hard and they played hard. And when it got towards the end of their life, and when, I talked to my dad and I said, what would you do differently? He said, I would have rested.
Oh.
You can't burn the candle at both ends.
Oh, wow.
I would have rested more. So now I look at that example he set for me as a child, right? Like this is who I looked up to. This is how I decided I want to parent. My kids call me, they know. Every single one. They'll tell their mom, they tell everybody in the family. If we got one phone call to make, it's gonna be dad, because we know he's gonna pick up.
Right.
We know we're gonna pick up my second oldest, and it touched my heart. She called me. It was like on a Friday night or something. And I was like, what's up, baby? And she was just laughing. And I said, what? She said, I'm playing this game with my friends. And it said, call somebody that you know will answer. So I called you.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a lot that we could do, and it's I'm with you. I'm with you in this mission.
Amazing. Like at the end of the day, we were doing some updates, and this is going to be called Marv's Story. We're looking to this point, but I think this can help a lot of people because it's relatable. Not to say that anybody else's story isn't, because it is, but from a parental perspective, yeah, Marv, I think you did because I've never really asked people the parental aspect of their story. And so congratulations that you provided a great parental side. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, to say, how many parents are actually going to open up their mouths knowing that they're the reason why their children actually have ACEs?
I don't know, because it's not the easiest thing to do, because
But how many people can it help? Can it help? It can not only help the kids, but it can help the person as well. So
because I think that if you do that, right, and then you can recognize, okay, this is what I did to impact my family. And I know that there are people who don't have a good relationship with their mother and their father. And it breaks my heart because both my parents are deceased. They've been gone for years now, decades. But it breaks my heart to see people not have the type of loving relationship that I had with my parents. And I know that most parents do the best that they know how, but they made mistakes. And even me, I made mistakes, and I tried to atone for them, right? To make it right. Thankfully, my children, they all like, it's good, Dad. Like, you good. Like, where would we be without you? And, I appreciate that. So I'm hoping that I am leading by example and making it to where folks can be a better parent and mend those relationships, because it continues to impact people. Those ACEs that, not only did you impact that child, but now you're impacting that adult, and they're still dealing with those things. And until you can heal that, I mean, we see it on TV all the time. You see, I don't want to bring up the names but those people who are dysfunctional as all get out.
For real.
And you see their parents. And the parents is, instead of being a parent like me, who would be like, look, baby, let's not do all this in front of the whole world. The parents is wilding out with them. So it's just, it's a bunch. And, we're here. So I can always come back. You know me, I could talk forever. This show will be 2 hours messing with me.
And granted, I think you've dropped so many nuggets, and I don't want you to stop, but I love that it's relatable. So you have been on this ACEs journey to support, but now you're on the ACEs journey telling your story. Thank you. Because I thought we were just doing some updates, showing the video, doing our thing. And the conversations are the conversations that need to happen at home. It needs to happen wherever it's needed, because it's so important.
It is. Very much so. Very much so. And the thing about it is, not to hold you too long, but the thing about it is, when I look at our community, the Black community, and I look at the emotional intelligence or lack thereof that many of us have in terms of how we respond to certain situations.
Right.
We talked about being a teacher in Chicago for years and how many students you lost, unfortunately. What if we were in a better situation as a community? What if all the racial, economic constraints that are put on us as Black Americans weren't there? And what if those things that created those adverse situations for our parents, that then made them create adverse childhood experiences for us, what if we were able to address those things? And if we do, then the next Dr. Torie, the next teacher in Chicago, doesn't have to deal with that heartbreak that you dealt with. The students don't have to deal with that heartbreak, because the young Black men who are gunning each other down, they know, hey man, it ain't that deep. Let's just move on. Let's talk about it. Let's just ignore one another. You exist over there, I exist over here.
And so that gun violence isn't just in the African American community. And I think that's what it is for me. We're not accepting ACEs because we're just not accepting ACEs. Who's accepting ACEs are the people that understand what it is and they're doing something about it. And I say that because Vivaldi was a school shooting. Those people have been impacted tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
When I found out that the CDC had updated it, it was mass shootings in 4 different places about 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I'm a researcher. Y'all can look it up if y'all want to. It's out there. It's not just us. We're the ones that's not doing anything about it. There are people that are, if that makes sense.
And
So
I don't.
that's what makes it
Yeah.
a huge pandemic, because it's not just a United States thing either. ACEs are everywhere. Again, me being a researcher, I've looked it up already. It's all kind of ACEs information everywhere, but people look at the United States because we're supposed to be the staple. We're supposed to be the people that have answers for everything when our healthcare is a mess. In this new rise of COVID, everybody's going to the hospital, and what they're doing, sending you home, because there's not anything that you can really do about it, which is the reason why ACEs was sitting dormant, because nobody was doing anything about finding about this information. So of course we want to get out and get this information out there so where people can understand it and seriously try to do something about it. But that's where the politicians come in. That's where other people come in. They got laws saying, okay, let's stop, with the gun violence and things of that nature. But are we really doing it? But if you understand ACEs, that could help so much with so many other things. I promise we'll see a decrease in a lot of things if we were just aware of ACEs and the ACEs score, and the information is out there. That's not a Dr. Torie thing. That's 1 in 6 people have an ACE score of 4 or more. That's statistics that's been out there since what the CDC did on the website from 2012 to 2020, they gathered a whole bunch of information. So 2019 was my dissertation, and they came up with some new statistics that they are using already, and it's out there. 1 in 6 have an ACE score of 4 or more.
Well, we're going to keep trying to reach them, right?
And I'm going to keep doing that. And I can do it not only virtually, but I can do it in my live. Because now we have where we can interview people in person, in addition to interviewing people virtually. And I thank you so much for that, seriously. I know you keep saying, quit saying it. Well, there's a lot of us that are on this ACEs journey, and there's room for a lot of us. So again, thank you for being a part of that. And then the things that you are doing to continue the ACEs journey with me, because you're going to see a lot of new things from me and this community that I have, because it's time to go ahead and bring ACEs awareness back, and a lot of ACEs initiatives that I think need some attention. I think it's time to go ahead and bring this information back so we can make people become ACEs aware. So
I'm with you for sure.
You have been. I thank you so much. It's a lot of people that are. And so I have to shout out everybody that has been supporting me since I started this journey. Thank you so much. You have not heard the last of me at all. I'm like, this has sparked up and lit an ignition for me to continue to do what I'm doing. So I look forward to it. It's going to be plenty more in store. Trust me.
And I'll be back on here.
I know you will. Yeah. I thank you, though.
No problem.
So Marv, where can we find your information? Tell us about you so they can know. You're an author. You lied about that. You didn't tell
it. Lie about it. I didn't lie. I didn't say it last time. I think I did. Go back and look at the last episode. But anyway, okay. You all can find me. My podcast is called The Man Listen Show. You can reach me on Instagram, MANLISTENSHOW. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. Go ahead and go to YouTube, follow us, click the subscribe button so you get notified of all of our shows. You can go to our website, www.manlistenshow.com. You can listen to past episodes. So you can find my podcast there. My book, Mythbusters, Lessons from Active Black Fathers. You can find that on Amazon. You can just look up my name, Marvin Banks, or look up Mythbusters, Black Fathers. It'll come up. You can purchase that. So appreciate you. And you'll see me producing podcasts just like Be Victorious. If you got a podcast that you want produced, holler
Yes.
at me, MBDB Productions. You can find me on Instagram. You can just inbox me or inbox Dr. Torie. She'll put you in contact with me. And yeah.
I'm gonna highly recommend, let's be clear. That's what I was gonna say, but you said it, put the words in my mouth. Yes, if you're in the DFW area, or not even in the DFW area, if you're looking for a producer, of course I'm gonna highly recommend mine.
You can do it. Hey, listen, you could be in Malaysia, you could be in Bali.
Right.
I can make you look and sound good. Just hit me up.
Thank you so much for everything. All right, you guys, you can find me everywhere. Y'all know that. Be victorious. Not just be victorious, but Dr. Victorious. That's DrVicTorieus. And I look forward to seeing all of you wonderful people soon. Take care.